Hello? Please answer!
Hello?
We're not here right now.
Before I tell you my name, I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine sitting in a hospital emergency room, desperately calling your husband over and over while his own mother is fighting for her life. You call once, twice, 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. Then, on the 31st call, someone finally answers, but it isn't your husband. Instead, another woman laughs into the phone. She tells you he's in the shower. She tells you they're together in Maui. She tells you to stop acting like a desperate old wife. Now imagine that your dying mother-in-law hears every single word. Imagine watching the heartbreak in her eyes transform into something far more terrifying, pure rage. Then, with her final breath, she presses a tiny silver key into your hand and silently mouths 2 words that will change your life forever. Destroy him. That wasn't the beginning of my revenge. It was the beginning of the truth. Hello everyone, my name is Claire. I'm 50 years old, and for 20 years I believed I had built a marriage based on love, loyalty, and sacrifice. I gave up promotions, vacations, and countless dreams to care for my husband's disabled mother, because I truly believed family came first. I couldn't have been more wrong. Everything I believed shattered in one terrible night, and by the time the truth was finally exposed, an entire family would be destroyed, federal agents would become involved, and the man I once loved would lose everything he had spent decades trying to steal. This is my story. The smell of funeral lilies still lingered throughout the house. Most people think flowers make a home feel peaceful after a funeral. To me, they only reminded me that someone I loved was gone forever. The white ceramic urn resting quietly on the fireplace held Margaret's ashes. For 20 years, she had been more than my mother-in-law. She had become my closest friend. As Alzheimer's slowly stole pieces of her memory and multiple strokes weakened her body, I became her caregiver. I fed her. I bathed her. I changed her clothes. I stayed awake through countless nights whenever she struggled to breathe. I held her hand during every hospital visit. I never once complained. Not because anyone forced me to. Because I loved her. Only 3 hours earlier, I had stood completely alone inside the funeral home, signing every document while the funeral director quietly expressed his condolences. My husband wasn't there. Neither were most of his relatives. Everyone assumed Mark was away on an important business trip in Boston. Only I knew the truth. Boston had never been part of his plans. As I stood in the silent living room, I slowly removed my platinum wedding ring. For 20 years that ring had represented promises. Promises of honesty. Promises of partnership. Promises that we would face every hardship together. Now it felt heavier than it ever had before. I placed it gently on top of the divorce papers waiting on the dining room table. The soft metallic sound echoed through the empty house. It felt strangely final. I wasn't crying anymore. I'd already used every tear my body could produce. Now there was only silence and determination. 3 nights earlier, the ambulance sirens screamed through the streets as I held Margaret's frail hand. "Stay with me?" I whispered over and over. "Please don't leave me." Her breathing was shallow. Her skin had become frighteningly cold. The paramedics worked desperately around us while I searched for my phone with shaking hands. Mark. I needed Mark. No matter what had happened between us over the past few years, this was still his mother. Surely he would answer. I pressed his name. Ring, ring, voicemail. I called again. No answer. Again. Still nothing. Inside the emergency room, doctors rushed Margaret behind large swinging doors while nurses asked me endless questions. Medical history, insurance information, current medications, emergency contacts. I answered automatically. My entire focus remained on my phone. Every few minutes I called Mark again. By the 10th call, fear had begun replacing hope. By the 15th, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. By the 20th, I realized something was terribly wrong. Mark always answered eventually. Always. Even if he couldn't talk, he'd at least send a text. But tonight, nothing. I paced the waiting room while machines beeped somewhere beyond the closed doors. Families cried quietly around me. Doctors hurried through the hallways. Time seemed frozen. I dialed again. 21st call, 22nd, 25th, 28th. Still nothing. I leaned against the cold hospital wall and closed my eyes. "Please answer," I whispered. "For your mother's sake, please answer." Then I made the 31st call. This time, someone picked up. Relief flooded through my body. "Mark," I said immediately. But before I could say another word, I heard something unexpected. Ocean waves. At first I thought I was imagining them. Then came laughter. Not Mark's laughter, a young woman's. She sounded relaxed, carefree, happy. The complete opposite of the nightmare unfolding around me. Then she spoke. "Oh my God," she laughed. "Will you stop calling already?" I froze. "Who is this?" Another laugh, Babe's in the shower? Babe. My stomach tightened. We're in Maui enjoying our vacation. Vacation. Every muscle in my body went numb. I think you've called enough, old wife. She laughed again. Stop being so desperate and let him enjoy himself. Click. The call ended. I stared at my phone. My reflection looked back at me from the dark screen. For several seconds. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even think. My husband wasn't in Boston. He wasn't working. He wasn't sitting in another hospital worrying about his mother. He was lying to me. He was relaxing on a Hawaiian beach with another woman while his own mother was dying. I expected anger. I expected screaming. I felt absolutely nothing. It was as if my heart had simply stopped beating. A doctor approached me quietly. His expression told me everything before he spoke. I'm very sorry, he said gently. We've done everything we could. The hallway suddenly felt impossibly quiet. My legs barely carried me into Margaret's room. She looked peaceful, too peaceful. I sat beside her bed and held her hand. I'm sorry, I whispered through tears. I couldn't reach him. I tried. I called him over and over. He isn't coming. Then something happened that I will never forget for the rest of my life. Margaret's fingers moved, only slightly. Her eyes slowly opened, weak, cloudy, yet completely aware. She had heard the phone conversation, she knew. A fire suddenly appeared inside those tired eyes. Not sadness, not fear, anger. The deepest anger I had ever seen. She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. Her oxygen mask made speaking impossible. Instead, her lips moved silently. I leaned closer. What is it? She looked directly into my eyes. Slowly, carefully, she mouthed two words. Destroy him. A chill ran through my entire body. Before I could respond, she reached weakly beneath her hospital gown. For years she had secretly kept something pinned inside her clothing. Even Mark had never known what it was. Her trembling fingers placed a tiny silver key into my palm. She closed my hand around it. Her eyes never left mine, as though she wanted to make absolutely certain I understood. Then, her breathing slowed. The heart monitor released one long continuous tone. The doctors rushed forward. The nurses moved around me. Someone gently guided me away from the bed. But I never took my eyes off Margaret. The last expression on her face wasn't fear. It wasn't regret. It was determination. Even in death, she was protecting me. And somehow, I knew that tiny silver key would change everything. I stood frozen in the hospital room long after the doctors covered Margaret with a white sheet. The tiny silver key rested in my trembling palm, warm from her final touch. I kept replaying her last words in my mind. Destroy him. Margaret wasn't a hateful woman. During the 20 years I had known her, she had always preached forgiveness. Even after her strokes stole much of her strength, she never spoke badly about anyone. So for her final message to be those two words, she must have known something I didn't. A nurse gently touched my shoulder. I'm so sorry for your loss. I nodded, unable to find my voice. As I signed the hospital paperwork, I kept glancing at my phone. Not a single missed call. Not one text. Nothing from Mark. His own mother had just died, and he had no idea. Or maybe, a terrible thought crossed my mind. Maybe he simply didn't care. The funeral took place 2 days later. The gray clouds covered the Pennsylvania sky as cold autumn wind swept across the cemetery. Friends, distant relatives, and neighbors stood quietly around Margaret's grave. Everyone asked the same question. Where's Mark? I forced a weak smile every time. Business trip. The lie tasted bitter. I had spent 20 years protecting my husband's reputation. Even now, after everything I had learned, I couldn't bring myself to humiliate Margaret's memory by exposing him beside her grave. But his relatives showed me no kindness. Uncle Richard marched toward me. Before the ceremony had even finished, he smelled of cigarettes and expensive whiskey. His face was already red with anger. This is unbelievable, he snapped. How could you let Mark miss his own mother's funeral? I tried contacting him. You obviously didn't try hard enough. I called him 31 times. Richard laughed sarcastically. 31. You expect us to believe that? He would have come if you had actually reached him. Several relatives nodded. One cousin whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. She's probably trying to isolate Mark from the family. Another added, Margaret deserved better. Every accusation landed like another stone on my shoulders. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew their precious Mark was drinking cocktails on a Hawaiian beach with another woman while we buried his mother. I looked toward the casket one last time. I'm sorry. I whispered inside my heart. I'm still protecting him. I don't know why. That evening I returned to the empty house alone. Every room reminded me of Margaret. Her favorite blanket still rested across her recliner. Her reading glasses remained on the side table. The half-finished crossword puzzle she'd struggled with a week earlier still waited beside her chair. The silence felt unbearable. I packed one suitcase. Nothing more. Only the things that truly belonged to me. Several photo albums, a few clothes, important documents, Margaret's silver key. Everything else, I left behind. Before walking out, I removed my wedding ring. For several minutes I simply stared at it. Mark had slipped it onto my finger 20 years earlier while promising he would always protect me. Now it represented nothing but lies. I placed it carefully on top of the divorce papers. Beside them I left one simple note. You chose your future. Now I'll choose mine. Without looking back, I locked the front door and slipped the house key into the mailbox. Instead of staying with family, I checked into an old roadside motel near the train station. The room wasn't fancy. The carpet was faded, the furniture was worn, but for the first time in years, I could finally hear myself think. That night's sleep never came. Every hour I found myself reaching for my phone before remembering there was no reason to wait for Mark anymore. Around midnight I unpacked an old tablet from my suitcase. The years earlier Mark and I had shared it before buying separate devices. He had never bothered removing his email account. As soon as the motel Wi-Fi connected, dozens of notifications appeared. Most were advertisements. Then one subject line caught my attention. Charge approved, Grand Wailea Resort, Maui, 3D500. I checked the time. The payment had been processed at almost the exact minute Margaret died. While I was begging doctors to save his mother, Mark had been paying thousands of dollars for a luxury vacation. I covered my mouth to stop myself from crying, but the tears never came. I was beyond heartbreak now. All I felt was disbelief. A message notification suddenly appeared. It was from Mark's younger sister, Susan. The message had never been opened. Claire, is Mark really in Boston? My friend just saw him at Honolulu Airport with a blonde woman. Please tell me she's mistaken. I stared at the screen. So someone else knew. At least I wasn't imagining everything. I typed a reply, then erased it. Whatever happened next, Susan deserved to learn the truth herself. The next morning I called the only person Margaret had ever completely trusted besides me. Attorney William Harrison. He had handled Margaret's legal affairs for nearly 30 years. When I mentioned the silver key, he became unusually quiet. Finally he spoke. I've been waiting for your call. Those words sent another chill through my body. You knew about the key. Margaret instructed me years ago. Can you come to my office today? I think it's time you learned the truth. His office occupied the second floor of an old brick building downtown. Books filled every wall. The scent of leather and polished wood reminded me of another era. Mr. Harrison stood as soon as I entered. His eyes immediately noticed the exhaustion on my face. I'm deeply sorry for your loss, Claire. Thank you. And I'm sorry you had to learn about Mark the way you did. You knew. He sighed. I suspected. But Margaret knew everything. For a moment neither of us spoke. Finally I placed the tiny silver key onto his desk. Without saying another word, he walked toward a massive antique safe hidden behind a painting. Inside rested a small wooden lockbox. He placed it in front of me. This belongs to you now. My hands trembled. The silver key slid perfectly into the lock. Click. The lid slowly opened. Inside lay 4 items, a sealed envelope with my name, a navy blue bank passbook, several legal documents, and another thick folder marked confidential. My heartbeat echoed inside my ears. Mr. Harrison gently nodded. Start with the envelope. I opened it carefully. Inside was Margaret's handwriting. Even before reading the first sentence, tears blurred my vision. My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, then I am gone. More importantly, Mark has finally shown you who he truly is. I stopped breathing. How long had she known? I continued reading. You have loved me like your own mother. You gave me 20 years of kindness that my own son never could. I watched you sacrifice your dreams to care for me. I also watched my son become someone I no longer recognized. My hands shook harder. The next paragraph changed everything. Mark has been waiting for me to die. He believes everything I own will become his. He is wrong. I looked up at Mr. Harrison. He quietly slid another document toward me. This is my last will and testament. My eyes scanned the pages until they reached the inheritance section. I read it twice, then a third time. I couldn't believe it. Margaret had left everything to me, every dollar, every investment, every personal possession, every legal right. Mark received absolutely nothing. There was one final sentence written in bold. I intentionally disinherit my son, Mark. This decision is final and shall not be challenged. I covered my mouth. She left me everything. Harrison nodded slowly. She called you her daughter. You were the family she chose. I burst into tears. Not because of the money, because after 20 years of feeling invisible, someone had finally seen me. Someone had understood every sacrifice I had made. Someone had loved me enough to protect me, even after death. But I still hadn't opened the confidential folder. And deep inside, I had a feeling the biggest secret was still waiting for me. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Margaret had left me everything. Not because I had asked for it. Not because I expected it. But because she believed I had earned it. I looked down at the letter again, my tears falling onto the paper. For 20 years, I had treated her as if she were my own mother. I never expected anything in return. I never imagined she had been quietly planning to protect me all along. Attorney Harrison waited patiently while I gathered myself. "There's something else," he said softly. He slid the navy blue bank passbook toward me. "You should look at this." I opened it carefully. The first several pages showed ordinary savings deposits from years ago. Then I reached the final page. The balance made my heart skip a beat. $500,000. I blinked, then looked again. The number didn't change. I don't understand. Mr. Harrison folded his hands. "Margaret spent years saving this money. She wanted you to have a fresh start. She knew one day you might need it." I could barely breathe. $500,000. Enough to completely change my future. Enough to finally live without depending on anyone. Enough to start over. But something still didn't make sense. If she planned this. I looked up. Why didn't she tell me? Mr. Harrison gave a sad smile. Because she hoped she would never have to. He reached for the thick confidential folder. "I believe you're ready for this." The folder was heavier than I expected. Inside were insurance documents, financial statements, corporate records, property reports. Everything had been carefully organized. The very first document caught my attention. Life insurance policy Margaret Whitmore. Benefit amount. I stopped reading. The payout was enormous, far more than I had imagined. But it wasn't the amount that shocked me. It was the beneficiary. Primary beneficiary Mark Whitmore. I stared at the page. Mark, my husband. The man vacationing in Maui while his mother was dying. He bought this policy 6 months ago. Mr. Harrison explained. He convinced Margaret it was simply responsible financial planning. I felt my stomach tighten. Hay insured his own mother. Yes. And shortly afterward, he began pressuring her to transfer control of her finances. Suddenly, everything felt different. The unanswered phone calls. His complete absence. His indifference. It wasn't coincidence. It was planning. I continued flipping through the folder. Near the bottom was another handwritten note from Margaret. The paper looked older. The ink had faded slightly. "Claire, if you are reading this, then I was right to be afraid. Mark changed years ago. At first I believed he was simply making poor decisions. Then I realized he had become dangerous. He asked about my savings more often than my health. He asked about my will more often than my medication. A mother always wants to believe her child can change. But eventually even I had to accept the truth. Please don't waste your future trying to save someone who no longer wants to be saved. Live your life, not his." I pressed the letter against my chest. For years Margaret had carried this burden alone. She knew exactly who her son had become. Yet she never stopped hoping he would change. "There's one more thing," Mr. Harrison said quietly. He opened the bank passbook again. "Look at the transaction history." At first the deposits appeared ordinary. Then something unusual caught my eye. Exactly 20 years earlier, the same year Mark and I got married, large withdrawals began appearing every month. $10,000. Again, another 10,000, then another. A few years later, enormous deposits suddenly started replacing the withdrawals. 50,000, 75,000, 100,000. The amounts varied, but every transaction came from the same source. I leaned closer. The company name printed beside each deposit sent a chill through my body. Horizon Builders. I frowned. "I've heard that name before." Mr. Harrison nodded. "I'm sure you have. It's owned by Richard." I looked up immediately. "My uncle-in-law. The same Richard who attacked you at the funeral." The room suddenly felt colder. But why would his company be depositing money into Margaret's personal account? Mr. Harrison remained silent for several seconds. "That," he finally answered, "is the question no one has wanted to ask." My mind raced. Richard had always presented himself as a successful businessman. He drove expensive cars, owned several vacation homes, hosted lavish holiday parties. Everyone admired him, including Mark, especially Mark. The two of them spent countless weekends together discussing business opportunities. I had never questioned it. Why would I? And now those memories looked completely different. "What exactly does Horizon Builders do?" I asked. "They're commercial subcontractors. They've worked on schools, hospitals, government buildings." He paused. "And several federal projects." Something about his expression worried me. "You think these deposits weren't legitimate?" "I don't think." "I know." He opened another document. These weren't bank statements. They were photocopies of accounting records. The highlighted sections covered nearly every page. Margaret secretly copied these years ago. She suspected money was being moved through her account. Without her understanding why. My pulse quickened. You mean, someone was using her? He nodded. Exactly. I stared at the highlighted figures. Most meant nothing to me. But one sentence stood out. Consulting payment, the amount, $100,000. Margaret had never worked for Horizon Builders. She was a retired elementary school teacher. Why would she receive consulting fees? She wouldn't. Which meant, the payments weren't real. They were laundering money. The words escaped my mouth before I even realized I'd spoken them. Mr. Harrison slowly nodded. That's our belief. A cold wave washed over me. Mark wasn't just cheating on me. He wasn't simply waiting for an inheritance. He might be involved in something criminal. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked the question that had been haunting me. Did Margaret know? Mr. Harrison sighed. Near the end, yes, she discovered enough to frighten her. She wanted to report everything. So why didn't she? Because she feared Mark. I stared at him. She believed her own son would hurt her. I wish I could tell you otherwise. His voice was almost a whisper. But yes, I remembered Margaret's frightened expressions during the last several months, the way she sometimes checked whether doors were locked, the nights she asked me to stay beside her bed a little longer. At the time, I assumed it was anxiety caused by illness. Now, I wasn't so sure. Mr. Harrison closed the folder. Claire, I've practiced law for over 40 years. I've handled complicated divorces, corporate fraud, family disputes. But I've never seen a mother prepare so carefully to protect someone she loved. He looked directly into my eyes. Margaret didn't give you this evidence for revenge alone. She gave it to you because she trusted your judgment. Whatever happens next, be smarter than they are. I slowly nodded. I will. That afternoon, I walked into Margaret's bank carrying certified copies of her death certificate, her will, and the legal paperwork. The bank manager personally escorted me into his office. After reviewing every document, he looked up. Mrs. Claire, according to Mrs. Whitmore's final instructions, you're now the legal beneficiary. I'd like to freeze every account immediately. He nodded. It will be done today. No withdrawals. No transfers. No exceptions. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. Within minutes, every account connected to Margaret's estate was locked. I thanked him and quietly walked outside. For the first time since Margaret died, I finally felt like I had taken control. I looked toward the afternoon sky. Don't worry, I whispered. I'll finish what you started. I had no idea that at that very moment, Mark's plane had already landed in Pennsylvania. He was driving home with his mistress, smiling the entire way, completely convinced he was about to inherit everything his mother owned. Neither of them had the slightest idea. Their perfect future was about to collapse before they even stepped through the front door. The drive back to my old house felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what waited for me. I wasn't worried about another argument. I wasn't worried about another excuse. I wasn't worried about another lie, because I already knew the truth. Mark had betrayed me. He had abandoned his dying mother, and now, he was about to discover that everything he had spent years waiting for had disappeared. As I sat inside my motel room that evening, my tablet rested on the small wooden desk. Years ago, I had installed security cameras throughout the house to monitor Margaret whenever I needed to leave for groceries or doctor's appointments. Those cameras were about to become my front row seat. I opened the security app. Every room appeared exactly as I had left it. The empty living room, the silent kitchen, the dining table, waiting, patiently, like a courtroom before the judge arrives. At exactly 7:56 p.m., headlights swept across the driveway. My heartbeat slowed instead of racing. A black luxury SUV pulled into the garage. The driver's door opened. Mark stepped out first. He looked relaxed, sun-tanned, smiling. The expensive sunglasses hanging from his shirt told me he had enjoyed every second of his Hawaiian vacation. He carried 2 large designer suitcases. Behind him walked Chloe. Seeing her in person for the first time surprised me. She was younger than I expected. Maybe 30. Perfect makeup, designer handbag, the bright white sneakers that probably cost more than Margaret's monthly medication. She wrapped her arm around Mark and laughed. I can't believe this house is finally ours. Mark grinned. It'll be even better after the paperwork. You'll see. Paperwork, inheritance, money. That was all he could think about. He unlocked the front door. The two of them stepped inside. Immediately, Chloe frowned. It smells like hospitals. The Mark laughed. Give it a week. We'll renovate everything. I'll hire designers. We'll knock down this entire wall. I'll build the kitchen you've always wanted. Listening to him casually erase 20 years of memories hurt far more than I expected. Margaret had celebrated every Christmas in that kitchen. She had taught neighborhood children how to bake cookies there. She had laughed there, cried there, recovered from surgeries there. and Mark wanted to destroy it before his mother's ashes had even cooled. He flipped on the lights, his smile disappeared. The hallway looked empty. No shoes, no jackets, no wheelchair, no medical equipment, no family photographs. Nothing. Claire. Silence. He called again. No answer. He walked farther into the house. Then he reached the dining room. I watched through the camera as his entire body froze. The divorce papers sat exactly where I had left them. My wedding ring rested on top. Beside them lay a photocopy of Margaret's bank passbook. Across the page stretched one enormous red stamp. Asixio and Farzem. For several seconds, Mark simply stared. His face turned pale, his hands began shaking. No. He whispered it so softly the microphone barely captured it. Then suddenly, no. He grabbed the papers. Read them again, and again. His breathing became frantic. This isn't possible. How did Claire get access? He looked around the room as though expecting someone to answer. Chloe walked over impatiently. What happened? He didn't respond. She snatched the papers from his hands. After reading them, her expression changed. Wet. Your mother left everything to your wife. Mark ripped the papers back. There has to be another will. There has to be! He began searching the house. Every drawer, every cabinet, every bedroom. He threw clothes onto the floor, opened every closet, pulled books from shelves, dumped boxes upside down. He searched for almost an hour. He found nothing, because everything important was already with me. Finally, he collapsed onto the living room sofa. His breathing was heavy. Sweat covered his forehead. This can't be. Folded her arms. I thought you said we were rich.
We are.
He stopped talking. Even he didn't know what to say. She stared at him.
What do you mean, were?
He swallowed hard. My mother's accounts? They're frozen. For now. She narrowed her eyes. For now, I can fix this. I just need a lawyer. I need to find Claire. She interrupted him. And the insurance money. Mark hesitated. She noticed immediately. Might take longer. Her expression hardened.
You promised me millions.
I know.
You promised we'd buy a beach house. I know. You promised we'd never have to work again. I know. He shouted louder than he intended. Silence filled the room. Then Chloe quietly asked one final question. So, how much money do you actually have? Mark looked at the floor. Not much. She blinked. What? My personal accounts. They're almost empty. I invested everything. You invested it where? He didn't answer. She already knew. Everything depended on Margaret dying. Everything depended on the inheritance. Everything depended on me. And he had lost all three. Chloe slowly placed her handbag on the table. She looked at Mark as though she had never seen him before. So, let me understand. You lied to your wife. You abandoned your dying mother. You dragged me across the country. And now you're telling me you're broke. I'll fix it. I promise. Give me a few days. I'll call Richard. I'll challenge the will. Before he finished speaking, slap. The sound echoed through the living room. Even through the tablet speakers it sounded sharp. Mark stumbled backward, holding his cheek. Chloe's voice became ice cold. You pathetic liar. I didn't waste 2 years of my life dating you to end up with nothing. You told me your wife was helpless. You told me your mother would leave you everything. You told me we'd be living in luxury. She shook her head. You're just another middle-aged man drowning in lies. Please, don't leave. We can fix this. She laughed. No. You can fix it. She picked up her designer bag, walked toward the door. Without looking back, she said, Don't ever call me again. Then she slammed the door so hard the entire house shook. Mark stood completely alone. The woman he had destroyed his marriage for had abandoned him in less than 5 minutes. For nearly 10 minutes he didn't move. He simply stared at the empty doorway. Then, he broke. He buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. He cried harder than I had ever seen. Not because his mother had died. Not because he lost his marriage. Not because he felt guilty. He cried because he had lost the money. That realization erased every remaining feeling I had for him. The man I loved had disappeared years ago. This stranger deserved nothing from me. Eventually Mark grabbed his phone. His hands were still trembling as he dialed. Come on, answer. A voice finally picked up. Richard, it's me. We have a problem. He listened for several seconds before speaking again. Claire knows. She found everything. The bank accounts, the will, the documents. He stopped, then quietly added the words that changed everything. I think she found the Horizon records too. There was complete silence on the other end. Even through the phone speaker, I could hear Richard breathing heavily. Finally Richard spoke. Don't touch anything. I'm coming over. The call ended. I slowly leaned back in my chair. A small smile appeared on my face for the first time in days. Mark thought Richard was coming to save him. He had no idea that both of them were already trapped. Because tomorrow, they were all going to discover that Margaret hadn't only prepared an inheritance, she had left behind enough evidence to destroy an entire criminal conspiracy. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. For the first time in weeks, I had actually slept. Not because my problems had disappeared, but because I finally understood something that had taken me 20 years to learn. The truth doesn't always arrive quickly. Sometimes it waits patiently until the people hiding it become careless. Mark had become careless. Richard had become arrogant. And Margaret had spent years quietly preparing for this exact moment. I dressed in a navy blue suit Margaret had once helped me buy for a charity dinner. She used to smile every time I wore it. "It makes you look strong," she would say. That morning, I wanted to be exactly that, strong. Attorney Harrison met me outside the house at noon. His leather briefcase looked heavier than usual. "You ready?" he asked. I nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." When we walked inside, everyone was already waiting. Mark sat at the dining table, looking exhausted after spending the entire night searching for answers he would never find. Richard stood beside the fireplace with his arms crossed. His expression reminded me of a man who still believed he controlled the room. Susan sat silently on the couch, refusing to look at anyone. There was someone else I didn't recognize. A middle-aged man wearing an expensive gray suit. He immediately stood and offered me a fake smile. "Mrs. Whitmore. My name is Daniel Vance. I'm representing the Whitmore family." I didn't shake his hand. "I don't believe we have any business together." His smile disappeared. "Oh, I think we do." Richard slammed his hand onto the dining table. "You've embarrassed this family enough. It's time to stop playing games. You stole Margaret's financial records. You froze the accounts. You disappeared." His voice grew louder with every sentence. "You've manipulated an old woman for years. You planned this. You turned her against her own son." I simply looked at him. When I didn't respond, he mistook my silence for weakness. "You'll return everything today. You have no choice." Attorney Harrison calmly stepped beside me. "Actually, she has every legal right." Richard ignored him completely. Mark finally spoke. His voice sounded broken. "Claire, please, we can work this out. I made mistakes. I know I hurt you, but we're still married. We're family." Family. The word almost made me laugh. Family doesn't abandon a dying mother. Family doesn't cheat for years. Family doesn't answer 31 desperate phone calls with another woman's laughter. Mr. Vance opened his briefcase. "I've prepared legal documents." He slid several papers across the table. "If you return the estate voluntarily, Mr. Whitmore is willing to delay divorce proceedings." I stared at him. Then at Mark. "You think this is about divorce?" Mark swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" I slowly opened my purse. "I mean, this stopped being about our marriage the moment your mistress answered your phone from Hawaii while your mother was dying." No one spoke. Susan's head snapped toward Mark. "Mistress." Richard frowned. "What is she talking about?" Mark's face turned completely white. "Claire, please don't." I ignored him. I called him 31 times from the emergency room. 31. The only person who answered was the woman sharing his hotel room. Susan covered her mouth. Richard stared at his nephew in disbelief. "You told us you were in Boston." Mark couldn't answer. Because there was nothing left to say. Mr. Vance quickly interrupted. "Personal affairs are irrelevant. We're here to discuss the estate." "No." I reached into my purse. "We're here to discuss the truth." Instead of removing documents, I placed a small black remote control onto the table. Everyone looked confused. I pressed one button. The large television mounted on the living room wall turned on. At first the screen remained black. Then audio filled the room. Richard's unmistakable voice echoed through the speakers. "Mark, the auditors are getting too close. If they discover those Horizon contracts, we're finished." Another voice answered. "Mark, Mother locked the account. Claire's watching everything." "If Mom refuses to cooperate," Richard interrupted, "then pray she dies before anyone starts asking questions." Silence exploded across the room. No one moved. No one even breathed. The recording continued. Richard discussed fake invoices, inflated construction costs, hidden transfers, offshore accounts. Money moved through Margaret's personal savings. Every word had been recorded months earlier by the kitchen security camera originally installed to protect Margaret. The recording ended. The room remained perfectly silent. Richard suddenly shouted, "That's fake. Those recordings are illegal." Attorney Harrison smiled calmly. "They were recorded inside Mrs. the Whitmore's own residence. They're completely admissible." Richard's confidence collapsed instantly. Mark buried his face in his hands. Susan looked physically sick. Even Attorney Vance slowly closed his briefcase. He had realized he was defending the wrong people. Mark suddenly stood. Richard forced me. He planned everything. I just followed instructions. Richard spun toward him. You little coward. You signed every contract yourself. You took the money. You bought the insurance policy. The two men began screaming at each other. Years of secrets spilled into the room within minutes. Neither realized they were destroying themselves. Attorney Harrison quietly checked his watch. Then he looked toward me. It's almost time. I knew exactly what he meant. A loud knock echoed through the house. 3 heavy knocks. Everyone froze. Richard frowned. Who is that? Attorney Harrison walked calmly toward the front door. Our final guests. He opened it. 2 people entered. The first was an older gentleman wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His expression never changed. The second wore a dark jacket displaying 3 yellow letters every American recognizes. FBI. The room became completely silent. The woman removed her badge. Special Agent Rebecca Harris. She looked directly at Richard, then at Mark. We have federal warrants. A Mark sneeze gave out. He collapsed onto the floor. No. No. Richard took 1 step backward. This is a misunderstanding. The older gentleman finally spoke. My name is Arthur Sterling, Director of Corporate Compliance at Summit Engineering. He looked directly at Mark. You're fired. No emotion, no anger, just absolute certainty. Agent Harris opened a thick case file. Over the past 24 hours, we've reviewed financial records provided by Attorney Harrison. Our investigation confirms large-scale fraud involving Horizon Builders. She turned another page. Kickbacks, money laundering, false invoices, corporate bribery. Richard's breathing became uneven. Agent Harris continued. But that's not the worst part. She looked directly into Mark's eyes. You approved substandard construction materials for the pediatric wing of St. Jude Children's Hospital. The room seemed to stop. Susan began crying. Attorney Vance quietly walked toward the front door. He wanted no part of what was happening. Agent Harris continued reading. The materials failed federal safety standards. Thousands of children were placed at unnecessary risk. Mark started sobbing. Swear. I didn't know. It wasn't supposed to. Arthur Sterling interrupted him. We recovered every approval bearing your signature. You knew exactly what you were doing. Attorney Harrison slowly removed 1 final envelope from his briefcase. There is 1 last instruction Margaret left behind. Mark looked up, his face filled with fear. No, please. Mr. Harrison ignored him. He opened the envelope. Inside rested a tiny blue knitted baby mitten. The same mitten Margaret had treasured since Mark was born. Susan smiled sadly through her tears. Margaret never let it out of her sight. Attorney Harrison gently turned it over. Hidden inside the fabric was a miniature digital recorder. I believe, he said quietly. Margaret wanted everyone to hear this. He pressed static, filled the room, then Mark's voice, clear, cold, merciless. Unlock the account. Margaret answered weakly. No. I'm reporting everything. Mark laughed. You'll do nothing. A loud crash echoed through the recording. Margaret cried out in pain. Then came the sentence that made every person in the room freeze. You'll stay in that bed until you die. And if Claire gets involved, I'll destroy her too. The recording ended. No one moved. No one spoke. There were no excuses left, no lies, no explanations. Only truth. Agent Harris stepped forward without saying a word. She pulled Mark to his feet. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the house. Then Richard received his own pair. As they were escorted toward the front door, Mark twisted around desperately. Claire, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I loved you. I looked directly into his eyes. For years I had dreamed about hearing him apologize. Now, the words meant nothing. You never loved me. You loved what I could give you. You loved my loyalty, my silence, my forgiveness. But you never loved me. He began crying again, realizing this time that no one was coming to save him. As the FBI vehicle disappeared down the street, I looked up at the bright autumn sky. Margaret had been right. The truth hadn't destroyed our family. Greed had, and justice had finally arrived. 6 months have passed since the day my entire world fell apart. Sometimes people ask me if I ever regretted exposing Mark. The answer is simple. No, not for a single second. For years, I believed forgiveness meant staying silent. I believed loyalty meant enduring betrayal. I believed that if I loved someone enough, eventually they would become the person I hoped they could be. I was wrong. The hardest lesson I ever learned was that love cannot change someone who has already chosen greed over family, lies over honesty, and selfishness over compassion. Mark made those choices. Richard made those choices. They weren't victims of bad luck. They were victims of their own decisions. As for me, I finally began living the life I had postponed for more than 20 years. With the inheritance Margaret left me, I purchased a small building overlooking the coast and opened the tea shop I had always dreamed about. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't a symbol of wealth, it was something much more valuable. It was freedom. Every morning, I unlocked the front door, brewed fresh tea, welcomed customers with a smile, and watched the sun rise through the front window. For the first time in decades, I wasn't someone's caretaker. I was simply Claire, Margaret's daughter in every way that truly mattered. A few weeks after opening the shop, I visited Margaret's grave once again. The autumn breeze gently moved through the trees, carrying away the last leaves of the season. I placed a bouquet of purple flowers beside her headstone. I kept my promise. I whispered softly, I finished what you couldn't. I hope you're finally at peace. For just a moment, the wind became perfectly still. And somehow, I felt she had heard me. Not long afterward, my phone rang. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number. When I answered, an automated voice spoke. You have a collect call from an inmate. I already knew who it was. Claire. Mark's voice sounded completely different. Gone was the confident businessman. Gone was the arrogant husband. All that remained was a frightened man facing the consequences of his own actions. Please, he begged. I'm sorry. I made terrible mistakes. They're treating me badly in here. Please help me. You have the money. Please, just this once. I closed my eyes for a moment. The 20 years of memories passed through my mind. The wedding, the laughter, the promises, the lies, the hospital, the 31 unanswered phone calls, Margaret's final breath, the silver key. When I opened my eyes again, I felt nothing but peace. Mark, I said calmly. I spent 20 years saving you from the consequences of your choices. I'm not doing that anymore. Without waiting for another word, I ended the call. Then I deleted the number forever. That was the last time I ever heard his voice. People often believe revenge means making someone suffer. I learned something different. Real revenge isn't anger. It isn't hatred. It isn't violence. Real revenge is building a happy life that no one can take away from you. While Mark spent his days behind prison walls thinking about everything he had lost, I spent mine serving tea, meeting kind people, and finally living in peace. Justice had done its job. Now it was my turn to live, and for the first time in 20 years, I truly was free. The story summary: Claire devoted 20 years of her life to caring for her disabled mother-in-law, Margaret, believing that family always came first. While Margaret lay dying in the emergency room, Claire desperately called her husband, Mark, 31 times. On the final call, Mark's mistress answered, revealing that he had lied about a business trip and was vacationing in Maui instead. Before Margaret passed away, she entrusted Claire with a hidden silver key and silently asked her to destroy him. That key led Claire to Margaret's will, financial records, and evidence exposing Mark and his uncle Richard's fraud, greed, and betrayal. As the truth unfolded, Mark lost his inheritance, his mistress abandoned him, his criminal activities were exposed, and federal investigators arrested both him and Richard. In the end, Claire honored Margaret's final wish, not through hatred, but by seeking justice and rebuilding her own life. What this story teaches us: sometimes the people who betray us the most are the ones we trusted the deepest. Greed can destroy a family far faster than poverty ever could. True family is defined by love, loyalty, and sacrifice, not by blood alone. Justice may take time, but the truth has a way of revealing itself. And most importantly, the greatest victory isn't revenge. It's finding the strength to begin again. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next emotional story. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done if you were in Claire's situation? Share your opinion in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.